I do coach a lot of players who are not high-performance juniors or D1 college players. Actually, mostly I'm coaching players who are either advanced beginners, I want to say, to intermediate players. And it seems that one of the biggest problems they have in doubles is to know when and how to poach. So in this video, I'm going to give you the skinny on how to time your poach and also what to do with the ball when you have it. When I coach players on how to poach, I love to start them off with a called poach. And what that means is that the server and the net player agree that the net player, aka you, because you're here to learn when and how to poach, goes to intercept the return off the first serve. I would probably suggest at the beginning of your poaching journey that you mostly poach off the first serve, because we're hoping, obviously, that the first serve, maybe your partner even has control over the placement so that you as the net player at least know whether you're expecting a forehand or a backhand return. And of course, we're hoping also that off of a first serve, you might get a weaker return. But even if your serving partner can't quite yet place the serve and or hit very forcing serves, I still want you to play the called poach, for the very reason that both of you know when the net player, you, is going to poach. It takes out all the guessing. When am I going to poach? What cues am I going to look for? Nuh-uh. You now, as the net player, only have to time your poach right, meaning when am I really starting to move, and also, of course, cover ground, not just lean, so that this doesn't happen. Now, from your perspective, you're the net player, I'm the returner here. You want to start moving as I'm starting to drop my racket here. If you're moving when I still have my racket up here, I can still change my swing somewhat. But as soon as the racket drops here, most everybody has made up their mind what they're going to do. Cross court is what we're hoping for, because you want to intercept that, and they're committed to that stroke. If they last split second as they're letting the racket drop, trying to change the direction of the shot, a whole lot of times you will force an error because they're actually shanking the ball and they can't really control the ball, which obviously is also a good thing for you. I'll show you an example of a well-timed poach right here. We see Chris at the net here, and he is starting to move, really gobble up space right here. So we see the foot is starting to set out. This is the highest point of the take back, and as the racket is dropping, here he's moving. And that gives him the perfect timing right there to intercept that ball. If we're going back to the first example here, you see that George up at net here pops up, is leaning a little bit, but you see this is way past the racket drop. So right here, this is probably the highest part of the take back, but he's basically still in the same position as contact is being made. So that is just a smidgen too late, and that's why, even though this is a really good return, he has absolutely zero chance of getting that ball. If you are a player who does not have, for instance, as much wingspan and or the athleticism to get to the point where we want to intercept the ball, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in a second, you may have to start your movement a smidgen sooner. And yes, it could be that you might get passed down the line, but still, when you're moving, when you're trying to involve yourself up at net, you're going to force errors just by moving. And of course, you would have to move a smidgen sooner if you were in a different position, if you were further out, which could be, to my mind, only when you're poaching out of the rally. When you're your server's partner, this is where you should start the point. You should not start the point out here when your partner is serving, because you're worried that you might get passed down the line. For that, we actually have a fail-safe. Your serving partner backs you up. Because it's a called poach, as soon as your partner, back at the baseline, who has served, moves over and covers the side that you previously were on. So if you're trying to poach this ball here, and should you time your movement wrong, you're moving a little too soon On the called poach, that should not be a problem because your partner covers behind you. Just in case, if George had moved too soon, which he doesn't, he times his poach properly here. You see that as he's starting to really move, as the racket is dropped here. But in case the returner had spotted that movement and would have been able to go down the line, you do see here that immediately Chris moves over after he has served, and he would have gotten that ball. And that should give you the confidence at the net player to really take off quickly. Once you've made up your mind with that called poach, it's go aggressively. You're taking off correctly as the opposite baseline player is dropping their racket. Now what? Your goal is to cover as quickly as possible, depending on your athleticism, your wingspan, we talked about the timing, to about this position here. It's crucial that you move diagonally towards that ball. If you were to just go parallel to the net here, you're not cutting the angle off. You end up chasing the ball and you're not going to get anything on it. So let's see what the scenario is here. You're the poacher, of course. You have the opposite baseline player directly across from you, and the opposite net player is in the shorter position. You can do one of two things. You can volley between them, because that is the most vulnerable position of the one back, one up position, or you go right at the feet of the opposite net player. When you're cutting across at net here, the distance between you two net players is so small that the opposite net player most likely has no time to react, especially when he's committing one of the errors that I see a whole lot in doubles. Let's look at this net player here. He's tracking the ball. He's looking, and that's perfectly fine where the ball's bouncing. He can make the out call if he wanted to, doesn't have to, but now he's committing this error that a whole lot of players are making. He's watching his partner return. And we already see at this point that Chris is moving. So not only on this poach here is the distance between them so small that he virtually has zero reaction time, he's also basically wasting time having to track the ball because he's just turning around too late. After you played the called poach a few times, even if you lost a few points, that's perfectly fine with me because you're showing your opposite returner that you are willing to move. So you are kind of sowing the seeds of doubt a little bit. Wow, that was very poetic there. But you have yet another way to get into their heads. You can fake poach. And what I mean by that is not what I do see a whole lot. It's a huge production. I'm poaching. No, it can be as subtle as just taking one step out. If you played enough of the called poach, you're totally in your opponent's head. They don't know whether you're staying or you're going or what you're going to do. So by simply doing this here, you draw their eye. You may actually already draw an error because, again, they're framing the ball. I'm also okay with the quick shuffle and then coming back here. You just got to make sure that you are ready to receive that ball and that you can then move forward and you get that ball down to the feet of your opposite net player. Let me know down in the comments if you are using the called poach already, and if so, what your experience is with it. And if you're not using it yet, do let me know after you tried it a couple of times how that went for you.